Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Reverend Matt and I'm the Connectionalist, and today I'm going to be reacting to another video from our friend Evan Raugust. It says, I went to Bible locations in real life. He went to Israel, which is awesome. So I kind of want to see what he thinks of Israel. He's probably going to have a little bit of a different take on some of the holy sites as a Catholic, because they kind of believe some different things than we do about that. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the video.
I'm in Israel, the Holy Land. This is where Jesus was born, lived, taught, and was crucified. But these aren't just stories from a book. These are real places.
Yeah.
I'm taking you to the exact places where Jesus lived. We're going to start with where it all began, Bethlehem, where Jesus was literally born. This silver star shows the exact spot where Mary had Jesus.
Yeah, there's a lot of this in Israel. There are some sites that have way better claims than others. But the Catholics a lot of times have like, not dogmatically, but they very much define like, yes, we believe this is the actual site. And so a lot of Catholics tend to have more belief that that's like the actual site. It may be, it may not. But there's a lot of it's been 2,000 years, right? So it's hard to really know.
Feet away is where the manger would have been. 2,000 years ago, this actually would have been a dark cave. Now it was a church where people still worshipped. I kneeled there in complete awe that God, the creator of the universe, humbled himself to be born in such conditions. I walked outside and saw the hills and tried to imagine them in Mary and Joseph's time. Now they had buzzing markets, cars honking, and towns with electricity running down the hillside. Yet beyond the traffic, the same rugged slopes that Mary and Joseph walked stretched over the horizon.
I've always really wanted to go to Israel to visit the holy sites there, but you know, it's just really hard right now, obviously. I'm sure it'll open up again. Not open up, you can go there, but it's a little dangerous right now. But I hope to go one day and see the Bible come to life, see the most important story of my life really just come to life on the page. That's why I'm excited. I'm going to the Mediterranean for my honeymoon, and I'm making stops in Rome and Ephesus and some different places. And so I'm excited to see some of the holy sites there, and I'm looking forward to sharing some of that with you as well on the channel.
Imagine them leaving Bethlehem to Nazareth of newborn, but that's not what happened right away. Before Jesus lived, taught, and was crucified and resurrected, right after he was born, Magi from the east arrived, following a star to honor the one born of the Jews.
Maybe. We're not sure if it was like right after he was born or if it was like in the first few months or the first year or two. We're not exactly sure.
They brought treasures for a king, but their arrival drew dangerous attention. King Herod, terrified of losing power, ordered every boy under the age of 2 to be ended. Many of these children were buried in what is now known as the Cave of the Innocents, and I actually went to this cave. Just feet away from where Jesus was born, there were tens of thousands of babies who were ended. I nearly broke down in tears just thinking of all the children who were ended. They didn't have to die, but they did. But eventually I stepped back out into the sunlight, hopped on a bus, and made my way to Nazareth, Jesus' hometown. Jesus spent around 20 to 25 years working as a carpenter, going to caves to pray, and attending the synagogue where he would memorize the Torah.
I love that picture of a 12-year-old Jesus in the temple. It's the only thing we have of Jesus between his birth and the beginning of his public ministry. It's the only story we have. And I think it's one of the great mysteries. It's like, who was Jesus as a teenager, you know? I wish we had more on that, but it's okay that it's a mystery.
Jewish scriptures. Even though Jesus is God, he also lived lives like us.
Yeah.
He probably stubbed his toe nearby. He ate like us, he slept like us. In Jesus' time, it was nothing.
And that's actually really important, because there's a lot of people who want to be like, Jesus probably never stubbed his toe, or he never got sick because he's Jesus, he never got sick. That is kind of a denial of the human side of Jesus. It actually can almost be heretical to have a belief like that, because you're denying the humanity of Jesus. Jesus definitely got sick. He stubbed his toe. You know, he turned a corner and hit his head, right? Because if Jesus doesn't have human experiences, then he's not human. Therefore, God did not become human, right? And it is a divine mystery, right? That the fully divine Jesus and the fully divine human, it's hard for us to understand. But it's vitally important that Jesus becomes a human so that he understands us, so that God understands us and can save us.
Nothing more than a tiny farming village of maybe a few hundred people tucked into the hills. And yet it was home for the first 30 years of Jesus' life. Today, it's noisy and bustling. shopkeepers calling out over the hum of traffic, narrow streets choked with scooters, and yes, even a McDonald's sign in the middle of the city. I also made my way to Mary's well, where she would draw water daily and is one possible place where Mary was told by Gabriel that she would
I appreciate possible place. I appreciate that.
birth Jesus Christ, the Messiah. I can only imagine her being like, why me? But despite that, she put her complete and total faith in God and said, not according to my will, but your will. What's also sad is that there's trash all around.
Ugh.
It's disgusting.
That makes me angry. Like, I don't know. I just had a visceral reaction to that. I mean, I understand a lot of the people living in Israel are, maybe not Christians or whatever, but still, a site like that should be clean.
Honestly, but I don't blame it. Nazareth is currently a Muslim majority town, and we're in Israel, which is a Jewish majority place, and Christians are by far the minority. If you're a Christian in a place like this, you might be one of very few. And it seemed like literally nobody nearby cared about it. This, combined with the fact that I was in a foreign country and the situation going on, just made me so honestly scared. And yes, scattered throughout the city, I noticed something remarkable. Crosses were like sanctuary.
I think that was Evan praying the rosary or something with his beads.
It's in the middle of it all. And so yes, I was still definitely scared, but what helped me was that I knew that I have God on my side. That isn't just me being young speaking, it's true. We got the guy who made this on our side. The 12 apostles literally died as martyrs for their faith. You think they weren't scared? But they went out and they did it anyways. I walked through these streets, picturing Jesus barefoot, carrying water for his mom. I imagined this sharp smell of sawdust in Joseph's shop. Where are we? Holy moly! Jesus grew up bougie. I'm just kidding. I know this is a modern city.
Yeah, no, he did not. Yeah, the city's completely different. One thing you got to remember when you're like, oh, these are the mountains Jesus walked on. It's actually kind of true, but kind of not. Like, even the geography has changed. A lot of stuff's way underground now over layers of dirt coming and dust coming over it, and been built over multiple times. It's very different.
2,000 years since Jesus was last here. Don't you forget that.
Yeah.
I thought about the feast Jesus celebrated in the local synagogue, the sun he watched set on these hills. And he was probably happy, living a peaceful life, and he could have continued that. But instead, he had a mission.
He could have continued that. That's so important. Jesus chose this. He knew it was his mission, but it wasn't like he didn't have a choice. He did. And he chose to do it for you and for me. That's the power of the gospel, is that Jesus could have taken the crown without the cross. He could have chosen not to die, but he did. And that is the best news ever.
To save the world. Also here, I started walking the quote-unquote Jesus trail. I'm literally going to walk the very steps that Jesus did. Nice. I was on my way to his first miracle where he started his ministry. While I could have just Ubered there, I decided that I wanted to walk like Jesus did 2,000 years ago. But that was kind of a mistake.
Honestly, if Jesus had an Uber, he'd have probably taken Uber. He'd have been like, I'm not walking that.
I look insane. I'm hot. I'm sweaty. I smell weird.
He's walking on the highway.
I'm happy. Because I'm doing... This is what Jesus did. Just without all the cars and all the paved ways, but...
A little more safe.
It's literally the same path Jesus walked. And that's just so awesome. Well, Jesus is God. I think we as Christians tend to forget he was also a man. A man who also got hot, tired, sweaty, and hungry. He probably had...
Jesus got hot one day and just sat down and the disciples were like, are we going to keep going? He was like, no, I'm done. At one point, Jesus was like, nope, I'm out. We're done for the day.
Times where he smelled weird. Yeah. Just kidding. Please don't get mad at me, Jesus. But finally,
he did. Because if he didn't, he's not a human. He did smell weird from time to time. He had body odor.
Made it to Cana, which is where Jesus...
And we're so uncomfortable with that because we love the divine nature of Jesus. But the problem is, the miracle is the incarnation. It's a miracle that God would take on human form and do all the stuff we do. That's the miracle.
Reported his first miracle and began his ministry. While I explain this story, I'm going to show you the exact archaeological ruins under this church where it happened.
That's cool.
Simply put, the place had just run out of wine, and Mary gently urged Jesus, saying, hey, look, they're out of wine.
I'm not doing that.
And Jesus was like, my time has not come, but she gently urged him again. And then Jesus did his miracle, and he transformed the water into wine. But honestly, the biggest miracle for this place is probably that there's a New York style pizza place right nearby it.
Oh man, there's nothing sacred. That's so funny, dude.
What? I mean, that's a joke, obviously. The miracle is that actually this is where we are. Honestly, just that I'm happy and I'm healthy. It's after this that Jesus traveled dozens of days and across Israel.
One of the things I like about Evan is he's just such a genuine guy. He seems like he's just really happy. He's just bopping around, loving God. I think it's awesome.
To Capernaum and the home of Peter. This is the central hub of Jesus' ministry and miracles. You might be wondering why he didn't start in Nazareth. Well, it's because when he stood in their synagogue and was reading Isaiah's prophecy foretelling the Messiah, that he told them, "It has been fulfilled in your midst," implying that he was the Messiah and was God. This was the reason why he was ultimately crucified, and the people drove him out of the town.
I love that painting. I love this painting of Jesus. My favorite piece of art around Jesus is La Pieta, which is Michelangelo's sculpture of the Virgin Mary holding him. It's her son. It's her baby boy, and she's holding his body. It almost moves me to tears to think about. And Jesus looks so small in her arms, and like that's so much being conveyed in that piece of art because it's the humanity of Jesus. It's the human tragedy of a mother losing her son, not knowing that the victory is right around the corner, right? That the suffering will mean something because he's doing battle with the forces of darkness and that the victory is right around the corner. And I love this photo of Jesus, the contemplation, the exhaustion on his face, the burden that he carries, knowing what he has to do. He has to go to Jerusalem and he has to die. And he knows that. He may not know all the details of how it's going to happen, but he knows he has to go to Jerusalem and he has to die.
They couldn't believe that the guy that they had grown up with was claiming something so radical as that. They drove him to the edge of a cliff, ready to throw him off. So, instead, he left these hills and made his way to Capernaum. By the time I arrived, the sun was high and I was sweating. It's so hot outside. Holy moly.
But his gel is still, his hair is on point. I love it. Either he reapplied or that is some serious stuff.
But I was just happy to be at the place where Jesus was. For example, here he healed a paralytic, healed Peter's mother-in-law,
the gospel trail.
I
want to do this gospel trail when I go. This looks cool.
It's also likely that Jesus literally stayed at the home less than 100 feet away from us. Jesus literally slept at that house. And along these shores is where he called the first disciples.
Yes.
Peter, Andrew, James, and John were literally just fishing when Jesus said, "Come, follow me and I'll make you fish."
And when you're along that coast, you can trust. You may not be in the exact spot where Jesus was standing, but that was the vista because you are in Capernaum, right? You're in the right town, right, where he called them, and that he called them while they were fishing. So you can trust that where you're standing, you're kind of basically looking at what they were looking at and what the scene looked like on that bright day when Jesus called the first disciples to follow him.
Of men. Can you imagine what they were thinking? Would you be willing to drop everything to follow some stranger? I think it's easy to say, yeah, I would. But honestly, I don't know if I would.
Yeah, I mean, probably not. There was something about Jesus. Now, he was offering them to follow him as a teacher, and maybe that was an adventure to them, away from the monotony of their everyday life as fishermen. But it's also risky. You don't know how it's going to end.
Also nearby were many other...
Talk about life-changing too. Right? Peter gets crucified upside down in Rome. That's how his life ends. And he's a peasant fisherman in northern Israel. And by the end of his life, he's being crucified upside down in Rome by the emperor himself. What an adventure and what a life where the Holy Spirit will guide you. It's incredible.
Events. The birthplace of Mary Magdalene, who was the first to witness and proclaim Jesus Christ's resurrection. The Galilee boat, a boat similar to what the apostles used.
Cool.
The rock of the bleeding woman, where the woman with blood problems was healed. The miracle of the bread and loaves, where he fed thousands with just a few loaves and fish. And the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the peacemakers, and that you are the light of the world." And then, of course, I went to the Sea of Galilee. It's surreal. Walking the exact same steps as Jesus. It's real.
Do you think that Jesus would have rode a Sea-Doo? I think so. I think Jesus would have loved a speedboat because he would have had a good time. Jesus liked having a good time.
It's real. I mean, I never
Yeah.
doubted it was real, but to see it up close, to
Yeah.
literally breathe the same air that he breathed 2,000 years ago, it's baffling. And 2,000 years later, it's still here. And as I waited for the sun to set, I could almost see it all. Jesus calling out to the apostles, stepping into a boat to preach as his voice carried over the waters. I imagine
When you see somebody like Evan, who's a Catholic, and you have these like Protestants who are like, oh, Catholics aren't going to heaven. And it's like, he clearly loves Jesus and believes in Jesus. And if you really believe in sola fide, Catholics like Evan, and there's most, which is the 99% of them, they love and believe in Jesus. I just don't understand why people think that. It's ridiculous. I mean, clearly Evan loves Jesus, and almost all Catholics do too.
him walking across these same waves, Peter reaching out in doubt, and Christ lifting him up with the words of faith. And as I sat there, 8,000 miles from my home in Texas, in a place where almost nobody was my religion, I felt completely still, because I knew God was here. But as peaceful as it wouldn't last for long, because while Jesus and the disciples were healing the sick, raising Lazarus from the dead, and proclaiming the kingdom of God, the storm clouds of opposition were gathering. The same crowds who marveled at his miracles would soon be swayed by leaders plotting his death.
Oh, I love this painting as well. This is one of my favorite paintings. I believe this one is entitled "Behold the Man," because it's Pilate bringing out Jesus, and he looks at the crowd and he says, "Behold the man," right? I love this painting. I think it's amazing.
And the road from Galilee
my favorite
would take
paintings.
me next to Jerusalem. We were at the Mount of Olives, and below us we could see the entire city. I'm here with
Gilbert.
and Gilbert here is going to be my tour guide, helping me explore the area.
Gladly, and I'll try to make it as simple as possible, even though it's complex.
And then where do I get one of those cool blue hats?
We're on the market.
He's like, yeah, that's something I buy. You don't get one of those.
Very cool.
Guess what? They're
Where?
made in China.
They're made, they're made in China. That's not going to be in the video. It's
pretty funny,
Also,
actually.
here was the same road that Jesus rode when he went to Jerusalem on a donkey. When he mounted the animal and strode down
Yeah.
these slopes,
Heck yeah.
crowds lined the road. It was also here on this very hillside that Jesus stopped, looked over Jerusalem, and wept.
wept, yeah.
He knew what was coming.
He knew what was coming, and he knew it was coming, and he knew that people would betray him because people are fickle, and he loves them anyway, but he's weeping because he's got to love them in the midst of the pain that they're going to cause him.
Not just his own suffering, but the destruction of the city itself and the rejection of the very one sent to save it. From here, the path would take us to Garden of Gethsemane.
And the rejection, and that's why Easter is so powerful, because the victory and the resurrection, that God rises from the dead, Jesus rises from the dead, and comes to all the people and gives and offers them forgiveness and offers them restoration and hope and healing. It's amazing.
Where Jesus had the passion and where he literally was so stressed out about what was going to come that he started sweating blood.
It's Jesus the Son resting himself into the
Well, the gospel says drops like blood. It's hard to know if the gospel is trying to say he was sweating blood or drops like blood, or if it's like trying to draw a metaphor, but that doesn't matter. Either way is cool.
hands of the Father. A lesson of obedience.
Beside the garden
Yeah.
stands the Church of All Nations,
Ugh.
built over the very rock where he knelt and suffered. Outside, the garden was quiet, leaves rustling in the wind. Somewhere beyond these gates, soldiers had come with torches, and Judas betrayed Jesus with a kiss.
Yeah.
We stopped at the place where Jesus was actually whipped and where Pontius Pilate let Jesus be crucified. Pontius Pilate thinks Jesus is innocent, but he's in a dilemma.
Saving his neck or putting Jesus to death.
But
Yeah.
Pilate explains,
It's the tradition that on Passover we release a prisoner.
so he gives them a choice. Give freedom to Jesus or give freedom to a violent murderer. The choice seems obvious, but the priests who think Jesus is blasphemous and a rebel stir up the people, and the voices grow louder. They demand Jesus be crucified.
Finally, he says, I see no evil in the deeds of this man. You want
Yeah.
to crucify him? I'm not part of it. Do it yourselves.
You could almost hear the echo of Roman footsteps as he takes on his cross. This is the Via Dolorosa, the way of suffering, the literal exact path Jesus carried his cross down. Gilbert was holding up well. You're tired?
No, I'm pooped.
But we carried on anyways. This is where Jesus falls for the first time. This is where Jesus meets his mother. This is where
Yeah, let me see that Latin inscription.
Anyways, this is where Jesus falls for the first time. This is where Jesus
Simone Cyreneo Crux Imponetur. It's Simon the Cyrene something. Simon the Cyrene, the cross imponetur. I'm studying Latin, but I don't have it all down yet. That's the cross of Jerusalem right here. And that was the cross of the Crusader kingdom of Jerusalem.
meets his mother. This is where Simon of Cyrene helped Jesus
Simon of
carry the
Cyrene.
cross.
Yeah.
And even though we were in the Christian quarter of Jerusalem, many of the shops were closed. And I asked Gilbert why this was. And as we continued walking the path, he explained.
Christian, they have difficulty.
Of course, there's a lot of Latin inscriptions. You will find Latin inscriptions and stuff in Israel because the Latin Crusaders controlled Israel for a century or more. So there will be some Latin stuff going on there.
Making a living.
Because of the war, tourism decline, and COVID, Christians in Israel who rely heavily on pilgrims to make a living are struggling.
Families, they don't see the end of the tunnel. People are desperate.
For example, in 1925, Christians made up about 30% of the population. But now that number has dropped to around 1.1%, and there could come a day in our lifetimes when there are no Christians in the Holy Land. But I kept this in mind as we continued forward and arrived at where Jesus was crucified and where he was resurrected.
It's where Christianity is born. Let's not go ahead of events.
No spoiler alerts.
No spoilers.
Jesus is brought here carrying his cross for a purpose. He is here to save humanity.
It just shows the love that Jesus had for us. He endured the ultimate sacrifice for you and for me.
That's the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. The Latin word for grave is sepulchrum. And so the Church of the Holy Grave is really what this means. Sepulchrum is the Latin.
For all of us. This is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the climax of the greatest story ever told. And to the right, you have Golgotha, where Jesus was literally crucified.
Yeah.
I always imagined it being on top of some
Got some Greek inscriptions up there too. Man, it's just unbelievable. One day I want to go, and I will.
grassy hill, but instead it was a stone quarry. Because at the time, they crucified criminals and thieves at just like a
If there's a ceasefire in the conflict and some kind of restoration of the conflict, I'd love to lead a trip over to Israel for folks here in the next couple of years.
random place, the equivalent of modern times of like a dumpster area. This was the exact stone where Jesus was crucified on. It's here where Jesus suffered. The nails were pressed into his hands. He cried out to God. It was his time. It was when he was gonna die. Everything went up to this moment until finally it was his time. It was
And you got, the inscription at the top, Jesus Nazarenus Rex Iudeorum, which is Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews in Latin. And it says in the gospel that Pontius Pilate wrote that inscription in 3 languages. I think he wrote it in Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic, and Latin, maybe. I can't remember, but the Gospels say he wrote it in different languages and put the sign above it.
when he was gonna die. Everything went up to this moment until finally it was finished. The temple split in two. Despite it being 3 p.m., the sky went dark, and there was an earthquake. The Son of God was dead. Joseph of Arimathea took the body and went a couple hundred feet over to deposit into a tomb. I always imagined it being farther, but it was actually much closer than it seemed. You could literally see the cross from where the tomb was. It's smaller than you might expect. The air is cool, almost eerie. Inside, there's nothing but a bare stone slab. It was crazy.
Hard to know if this is the actual side, of course, but it's still a very holy and sacred site where you can draw a lot of meaning out of it.
Crazy to think that centuries and hundreds, maybe even billions of people had went to this stone and remembered the Savior who died for their sins. But as you and I both know, this isn't where the story ends. Because at this moment, the apostles thought it was over. They thought Jesus was dead, and they returned to being fishermen. And it was here when they were on the lake, catching fish. They were annoyed because they had been fishing for a while. They didn't have much fish. But then a stranger from the shore calls out to them and says, actually, cast the net on the other side.
Yeah.
They did, and suddenly it overflowed. That's when John said, it's the Lord. As soon as they found out, Peter didn't wait for the boat to
Love
return
that
to
icon.
shore. He jumped out, tried swimming in the waters to his Savior. And there on the beach was Jesus, alive. The one
Oh,
who
what a painting. I've never seen this one before. I love it. Wow.
conquered death was making food for his friends. I'm crying.
Yeah,
This is so
for those who
great.
care about the story, it is. It makes me cry because it's everything to me.
He's making food for his friends. I'm crying. This is so cringe.
It's not
I'm
cringe,
sorry to be one of those YouTubers crying in a video. You know, I grew up going to church, reading my Bible, and you hear these stories about Jesus. And obviously, I knew they were true, but to actually see it in person
His little video advertisement is blocking the rest of the video.
was something else. Check out this video if you'd like to see me go to every Christian denomination's church.
That was a good video, as always. Evan does such a great job. Really cool. I'd love to lead a trip to Israel. That would be so cool to offer that to people on the channel too. If they people who watch the channel offer that trip to them, I'd love to lead a trip to Israel when things calm down a little bit over there. But that was awesome. Make sure you go like and subscribe to Evan, and make sure if you like my channel, you like and subscribe as well. It's the best thing you can do for a young and growing YouTube channel. We're going to be doing something for 1,000 subscribers, so I'm not sure what that is yet, but be looking out for that very soon. But until next time, I'm Reverend Matt, and I'm the Connectionalist. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.